Hey everybody, the IGN Entertainment team here with our reaction to the news that Ben Affleck is the new big screen Batman. This is a pretty surreal time for the internet. Ben Affleck, the creator of much fan hate before he was even cast as Batman, even though he is, in my eyes and many other people's eyes, redeemed himself for Gigli and J-Lo and everything else. Let's just talk about it. You guys, let's start with you, Scott. What do you think of Ben Affleck as the new Batman and the Man of Steel sequel?
I think that it's potentially really cool. I think as most people were, I was kind of surprised at first and didn't know how to react for about 5 seconds. And then, you all right there, Roth? You just knock your
beating things.
I was surprised at first, but then, pretty much almost immediately, I was like, well, you know what? It actually makes a lot of sense for Warner Brothers. I understand why they did it, and I think could be cool. I mean, you've got Affleck's an Oscar winner, isn't he? Did he?
Yeah.
For directing Argo.
He's got 2 Oscars.
He's got 2 Oscars
for Good Will Hunting and
for producing Argo.
Yeah. So you know what? The thing about like casting, fan casting, where comics fans like can't get their head around who's playing who in a movie. It's like we have no idea what the script is. We don't know what Zack Snyder has intended for the film. We don't know anything about this movie yet. So how can we really know if he's going to be
But he's Ben Affleck. We already know. He's going to suck.
He's Daredevil. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was the worst thing about that movie, right?
Right, yeah.
Roth, thoughts on the casting of Ben Affleck? Or as we've already coined him, Batfleck.
Batfleck, yeah. I mean, I think it's a really fascinating choice for him to make at this point in his career. And again, circling back to what we're sort of saying, I think it's silly to lay the blame of Daredevil all at Ben Affleck's feet. That's silly to do in the first place. He's an older actor now. He's a different actor.
It made $100 million to begin with, Daredevil.
Right. Yeah. He's an older man now, and he's an older actor. His career has taken a markedly different direction, and I think he brings, just by being Ben Affleck, the sort of the director and the social activist, that a different kind of gravitas.
Yeah.
We have no idea what this story is, and we always think we know that somebody can or cannot do something until they do it wonderfully.
Yeah.
But even more importantly, is that what I think fans forget is that the business side decisions. And Ben Affleck has a very, very close relationship with Warner Brothers. You know, his production company with Matt Damon is set up there. He has several projects in the work with them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are taking a long-term vision here, right?
Yeah, like, especially with Christopher Nolan now, essentially, I don't want to say divorced from Warner Brothers, that's not the case, but he's, his next movie, Interstellar, they had a buy-in on that movie, and I don't recall seeing his name in that press release that went out yesterday about Batman versus Superman. They did kind of say in previous press things that, he might probably not be as involved with it. I'm sure he's probably got some say in it. He is working with Casey Affleck, Ben's brother, on Interstellar. So he loves himself some Affleck too. But Joey, you're
Nolan's
your thoughts.
I'm sorry, Joey, not to cut you off, but real quick. I think Nolan is basically now what Tim Burton was on the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. His name's in the credits. He'll get money out of it. I don't think he really has
He's
too much.
He's got plausible deniability if something goes south.
Yeah, he wanted out, So
yeah. Joey, thoughts on Ben Affleck?
I'm so excited. It's ridiculous how excited I am.
Yeah.
And
why is
I never knew that so many casting directors lived in the world. And they all are on the internet, apparently.
Right. And they're all experts in what people's range is and what they can do. And
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I just always, because around that, 2003 or whatever, I don't like Daredevil, but like you said, he's certainly not the problem in that movie.
Yeah.
I think that actually shows a pretty good ability to play a duality of the secret identity and a superhero.
And also, let's look at Ben Affleck for a second. How dare they cast as Bruce Wayne, a 6'3", handsome, muscular, smart man,
Rich.
wealthy man, yes, with a string of past girlfriends. I mean, he is nothing like
Bruce
this character.
Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, the only other person who's probably more like a real-life Bruce Wayne was probably Armie Hammer, in that he was an industrial heir, you know? I mean, but I think, you know, Ben Affleck, to your point, Joey, is a guy who, not only with Daredevil, but also with Hollywoodland, he has been steeped in the idea of comic book movies, what they mean, the downside of them, for a long time. So let's talk a little bit about him knowing all this to begin, feeling very burned, very vocal about Daredevil, even right down to the costume and hating wearing that suit. The fact that he would sign up to play Batman, knowing how the internet already feels about him, doesn't that show that he's got balls the size of Cadillacs, pretty much? And really, he is willing to take that.
I think that
for
shows
something bigger. Go ahead, Joey.
I think that shows that he knows that the internet isn't anything.
Yeah.
Like, the internet is 1% of who's going to be seeing the movie, and who cares? Mm-hmm. Who cares what the internet says? And I love that. You know, I mean, I know as a comic book, I'm a huge nerd. I know the passion that goes along with that. But like, yelling about DC making this decision, it's not DC at all. Yeah. And whatever, like, you don't know anything about the movie business, so maybe just sit back.
It's like I said to my wife this morning. I was like, the chances of my in-laws going to see Batman versus Superman just increased like 100%.
Right, exactly. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
I think to be fair though, and I understand what you're saying, Joey, too. But because I think that people make a lot of assumptions, like I said, that aren't based on the actual business, and the people that are making these decisions are making these decisions based.
She froze up.
That aren't just who we think would be cool as Batman. We think John Hamm would be cool as an older Batman. He would be cool as an older Batman, you know. But so could Ben Affleck, and I think that him taking it on is a decision on his part, and like I was saying before, because he was resistant, with good reason, and it probably is financially based a little bit, but I think also I would not be surprised if they're testing the waters for an Affleck directed, either if it's not Justice League, one-off Batman movie, something like that. And wouldn't that be interesting if the team behind Argo did Batman?
I mean, think about the creative Godfather thing that they were trying to do with Nolan. Nolan clearly has gotten the comic book thing out of his system. They need somebody, an artist that they can trust. Affleck, as long as he can...
Got them an Oscar.
If he can pop up in an acting role as Batman every now and then, but direct his own films, his real passion, he's kind of got it made. He's got his coin coming in, you know?
And as he said in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, one for you, one for me. He knows that model. He's been doing that model.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that fan reaction. It's been primarily negative. I mean, even though I've been essentially defending him on Twitter, one of my tweets and one of the I'm afraid snarkier ones got cited by some Canadian news outlet, which it kind of disgruntled me a little bit because it was taking something kind of out of a larger context. But you know, the fact that
that's called the internet, right?
Right, exactly. I just said something like Ben Affleck is the new Michael Keaton, except, you know, tall.
And the new Heath Ledger.
Conventionally handsome and muscular and has 2 Oscars. Yeah, I mean, Heath Ledger's casting as Joker wasn't exactly met with overwhelming approval. It was either met with, or just complete, you know, oh, great, they got a gay cowboy or some stupid nonsense like that. But to give you an idea of how mainstream the Ben Affleck casting news is, you know, I'm home in Boston, Ben Affleck's hometown, and I've got relatives asking me about it. They don't give a shit otherwise about Batman. I've had exes text me, what do you think of this? I've had friends from college I haven't talked to in a long time. Like, it's pretty amazing that the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman has kind of garnered a response from not just fanboys, but from sort of a general public. I mean, if anything, people are talking about this movie now, beyond just the fanboy circle.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about, like, my mother-in-law going to see this movie when it comes out. Like, I think Us Weekly already ran a story today about Ben Affleck's workout routine in preparation for the role. Highly dubious story.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, because he wasn't already working out,
Right, he wasn't already, right.
He will buck out.
I mean,
sorry,
we saw him in the town in Daredevil. I mean, the dude is 6'3". He's he can fill the door. I mean, he's the tallest guy to play Batman so far. So if they're going in strictly like the comic book checklist of what you have to play a superhero, he's got that jaw you can park a Buick on. I mean, he looks like the Jim Aparo Batman.
Yeah,
and I think he's going to be much more of a traditional superhero than like a quote unquote Dark Knight.
Yeah, he's more Bruce Wayne than
even Bale, who was
even Bale,
who was a good Bruce Wayne.
Exactly.
But let's get back to the fan talk. What do you guys think of or just the reaction in general? What do you guys make of the fact that Ben Affleck has created a response? Like, if Josh Brolin or Ryan Gosling had been cast, would we have as much eyeballs on our stories as we do right now, and would we really be having as much heated debate?
No, and not on either side, I think. And that's the interesting thing, because I think what you guys are saying in an audience that may not even have had this film on their radar, believe it or not, our audience can't believe that anybody doesn't have it on their radar, but there's people that don't. That Ben Affleck can attract an audience that otherwise may not be interested, I think is very attractive to Warner Brothers for one thing, but also the thing that I found interesting was that you said this, Jim, that it's like people are caught in 2003. They're like, oh, what is J-Lo going to be cast now? Like, no, J-Lo's not going to be cast as Catwoman.
10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago.
I don't know if you guys saw, but on Twitter someone already had made Affleck Batman as a handle. And he got like thousands of followers right away, but the one person that account follows is Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, that's
such great trolling. I loved it.
But I mean, I think it's those comparisons to Gigli a long time ago, and it's totally unrelated to what's happening now. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And so I asked people, like, why are you actually upset? And the only thing, one person was like, oh, I think his voice is too distinctive. And that.
What does that mean?
I don't even know.
That's nonsense.
They're talking about the accent, which he can turn on and off. I mean,
I want Batman to have a Boston accent. If this guy is supposed to be, a lifelong East Coast person, he should have like some sort of Brahmin or Kennedy-esque accent, coming from this old family.
Will he do the
I am going to fight crime.
I think the other concern was what you were saying, like, will he fill out the suit? And I'm like, do you know how much money they got for trainers? He'll fill out the suit. That's not a problem.
I've met Ben Affleck a few times. The dude, he can fill the door. He's a big guy. He'll be fine as Batman. I mean, Armie Hammer is 6'5", and he was telling me when he was in the bat suit for JLA, which obviously never happened, he was 7 feet tall. By the time he put on the boots and the ears and everything, like, Ben Affleck's Batman is going to be probably the most physically intimidating of all the Batmen that we've had so far. But I think let's talk a little bit about career-wise for Affleck. How does this affect a guy whose directing career has launched him into the A-list of directors, who's got 2 Oscars? It's very easy to tease Affleck, but the dude has 2 Oscars. And his movies, make decent amount of money. What do you think this means career-wise for him as a director? Does this mean now between making these comic book movies probably every other year? I mean, they're going to start shooting this one early next year. It's right around the corner for a summer 2015 release. Does this basically put a crimp in his directing career, or is it a blessing in disguise? Let's Joey, let's start with you.
I think it's...
Joey froze up. Joey can't handle this.
I think it's probably both. I'm sure the projects now because he's doing Batman. So maybe he's doing less, but I think he probably has more freedom to do what he wants.
Okay. Scott, thoughts on that?
Well, you can be sure that he's not tied into some kind of Marvel contract where he has to make 9 pictures and give his firstborn, I mean, I'm sure he dictated the terms. So he's getting a lot of money to do it, which he probably hasn't made a lot of money on pictures like Argo, right? Which are smaller.
He's probably spent money on them, on films just to get things made.
Maybe. So he's making a lot of money. There's nothing to be embarrassed about making a superhero movie these days either. So if he decides to then go on and, as Roth said, maybe make a standalone Batman sequel after JLA or something to direct it, I'm sure that door is open for him as well, and that could be great for his career to prove that he can make that kind of a film. So I don't think there's too much for Affleck to lose here. After he shoots Batman, he's got his other stuff going on. I can't remember the title of it.
He's starring in Gone Girl for David Fincher. That's his next acting thing.
Right.
And he was supposed to do Live by Night, which is Dennis Lang.
That's on hold.
And then he was going to do a movie about that other famous Boston guy, Whitey Bulger. There's me, Ben Affleck, and Whitey Bulger. Those are the 3 famous Bostonians. And then occasionally we'll let Matt Damon in the club.
So he's got a Fincher picture coming up as well. So balance. You do a Batman movie and you do a movie with David Fincher.
He just did a thing. He did I think 2 films now with Malick. Right. And it's just it's to me it's an interesting. He's carving out a very interesting career for a guy whose career was dead just 3-4 years ago. I mean, Gone Baby Gone got him on the map, even though it wasn't a financial success. It showed people, this guy, like a Warren Beatty or a Clint Eastwood or a Robert Redford, he might be a little wooden as an actor or only is really good at one thing, but he's a hell of a director. And then, of course, The Town showed that he can direct himself in a movie, and that movie can make money, and it can be good, and it can get nominated for an Oscar. And then his very next directing picture that he also starred in can make money, which how many times did you think an Iranian hostage movie was going to make money? And when
based on the
what I'm saying is
Jack Kirby comic, by the way, right?
Right. I mean, what I'm saying is, don't bet against Affleck. This guy his career should be dead. He should be in direct-to-video movies now, and it's not. So I just think that he's a much safer choice than people are giving him credit for. Let's talk about how many Batman movies do you think they're going to get out of him? He is 41 years old. And actually, it kind of struck me too. He was Jack Ryan for one movie. So there's another established character that other actors have played that he has kind of stepped in. And I didn't mind Sum of All Fears. I thought the movie had other problems, but it was not a success. So 2-part question then to the panel. What was my first part? What was I initially saying?
How many Batman movies?
Yeah, how many Batman movies do you think he'll get? And do you think...
and how many beers have you had so far, Jim?
None. I don't drink beer anymore. That's because I had a problem. That's not. So how many Batman movies do you think we're looking at from 41-year-old Ben Affleck? Roth, let's start with you.
4.
4. Okay.
I mean, I think they're consulting. It's interesting because they're consulting with Frank Miller on this one. They used his quote when they made the announcement. So you assume that whatever's going to happen in this movie, it's going to feature a weakened Superman. Otherwise, there is no battle. And then what happens between them is the question. So is it that they go straight into Justice League after that because they've made up and become, best bros by the end of this?
Super besties, yeah.
Super besties by the end of this, or do they go off into their next Batman iteration, at which point, if they're going to do a single-off Batman, you probably want about 3 movies, right? So if it was those 3, this and Justice League, about 5, if they do it efficiently, it's possible that he could do that, especially as this more older, sort of grizzled Batman. The good news is we wouldn't have an origin story.
Right. Right. We've already. They don't necessarily have to trample on the Nolan stuff. Again, this is a separate universe. Even though, frankly, I feel like they could have made the Bale Batman stuff work, but that's a different conversation.
They supposedly tried to, right?
Christopher Nolan was doing smaller films before he took on that franchise, and he is now given enormous amounts of money to make art films. You know what I mean? And Ben Affleck, it's hard to predict what will happen, but he may be looking at that and going like, hey man, that's not a bad path to take.
Well, also,
you really
Ben
are a
Affleck makes
director.
probably more audience-friendly films, too.
He does.
Being an actor, he wants to be liked. I don't think a director worries about whether or not an audience will respond to him. I think the fact that Affleck's an actor, he knows, like, at the end of the day, I have to make sure that the audience is really on board with me. So he can do highbrow films that still have a kind of popcorn appeal to them. I mean, Argo, yes, serious Oscar-winning movie, but it was paced like a caper, paced like a thriller. And The Town is a great just bank heist movie. Joey, how many Batman movies do you think he'll do, and how many would you like to see? What if this was just a 2-movie Batman? Would you be okay with that?
Honestly, I feel like they're going to do another Batman standalone movie, but I feel like he's going to be more of like a Tony Stark of the DC universe, popping up where he needs to or whatever. I feel like that's going to be more of his role rather than, obviously in Justice League and stuff like that. But as far as standalones, just one would be fine. As long as I just want it to be a Batman movie, where he's detecting and figuring stuff out and not reacting to everything. I love the Nolan movies, but it's like
that's why you have to watch Beware the Batman, right, Joey? He does plenty of detective work there.
Yep.
Are there any other thoughts or issues about this casting and well, actually, yeah. Let's talk about. Do you think Affleck will he overshadow Henry Cavill?
I guess it is a danger, isn't it? Especially when you hear these rumors about Lex Luthor being in it and maybe being like a Bryan Cranston, perhaps.
Argo, right there, another Argo.
Right.
Connection.
So, Henry Cavill. I think that is a danger, and it kind of also raises the question of how much of the movie is going to be Superman and how much is going to be Batman. Is it going to, because it is technically a Man of Steel sequel, right? So is it the kind of thing where we don't get Batman we don't see Affleck until 45 minutes into the movie?
Or do we see Bruce Wayne a lot, and then, are they going to play it like, Bruce Wayne's, just millionaire playboy Bruce Wayne, and then every now and then Batman is just in the background?
Right. Yeah.
I kind of like the idea. Go ahead, Joey.
I just, in terms of what Jim said, I don't think he's a character at this point, an entity that can be played that way. Like, no one, even if you don't really watch superhero movies, you know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So playing that for an element of surprise would just be a waste of time.
Yeah. But do you think, how do you think they're going to explain the fact that now, Batman has been around for at least 10 years. There's no mention of there ever being another superhero in the Man of Steel world except for little Clark Kent wearing a cape.
Here's the thing.
Are we going to get the idea that Batman kind of did inspire people to dress up or something? Like, you know what I mean?
Here's the thing. So in the current, now I'm not saying they're going to go off this, but in the current continuity, DC just rebooted their whole universe and stuff, and they sort of set this hard rule where superheroes have only really existed for 5 years, and that's when Superman first appeared. That's when all the everyone else showed up too. But Batman had been operating before that. He was just more. He wasn't an overt, "Hey, I'm Batman." He was this the
urban legend.
The urban legend that the criminals talked about in the streets. So it's very, they could just go the route of Batman's been operating Gotham behind the scenes. Like, no one's ever snapped a picture of him. He's just been sort of this urban legend, and then Superman comes along. And that's Batman's sort of incentive to be like, all right, this is a thing now, so I'm gonna come out and we're gonna do what
which is really cool too, because it's like we might even get to see a little bit of that Batman that I've always wanted to see on the screen, which is him just sort of street level fighting ordinary criminals, and it doesn't have to the problem I always have with the first Burton movie, which I love, is that it's like right away it's just him against the Joker. It's like I'd like to see that Batman who's just kind of day-to-day ordinary crime fighting, and it doesn't always have to be super escalated.
Right.
I think that's going to be hard, though, when you're talking about a combined film like this. You know what I mean? I feel like I feel like, if anything, given the direction that it sounds like it's going, that Batman's going to be more of the fish out of water. That he's going to be coming to Metropolis for whatever reason, like to solve some kind of problem, because there's some kind of crisis, because
the city
Superman
needs
is
to be
a government
rebuilt,
patsy.
too. And they did that with, wasn't it No Man's Land? They did, Lex Luthor came into Gotham to help rebuild it, and him and Bruce Wayne sort of locked horns. I mean, wouldn't they just basically take flip that and have it that Bruce Wayne maybe goes to Metropolis to try and help rebuild this city, and runs afoul of Lex Luthor, who's trying to do the same thing? Maybe, I don't know.
It's also, I mean, I do think Bruce and Lex should be colliding in some level, like in their civilian identities or whatever. But it's also
like in like in the Lego movie and the Lego game.
Sure, I don't know. But it's also a thing where Batman, is this dude who's super paranoid about everyone that he knows, and has contingency plans for his contingency plans. And this alien shows up that basically destroys half the city. Of course, he's going to want to investigate and see what this guy's about and where he's from. And so I think it would make
which shouldn't be too tough to do. All he has to do is talk to that cab driver in Smallville that dropped him off. But that's, dropped off Lois.
Right.
So that should be okay.
But by the way, how much of a... You can't think that David Goyer and Zack Snyder had the destruction of Metropolis in mind in terms of setting up the sequel. I feel like that has turned out to be a happy coincidence for them. They're going to incorporate
and the whole Zod thing. I mean, look, if Batman's thing has always been, I don't kill. And he has more reason to kill than Superman ever did. And this guy comes to Earth. He's the most powerful being on the planet. Sure, he saves the day, but can I trust him? Like you said, Joey, he's paranoid, and this guy is a complete game changer. He's no longer just, Batman literally has to pull out the big guns to deal with this guy. The fact that this alien killed someone in front of everybody. Do you think we're going to see Batman mention that, exploit that as a sort of, you can't be trusted, you can't be
maybe
trusted,
maybe Superman, understands.
Snaps Batman's neck.
Yes, and he just kills everybody. Superman kills
That's it's already annihilated. Do you think that they're going to have to weaken him, Joey, or do you think it'd be cool to just have him try and match his wits against that kind of power?
I don't think they're going to physically ever fight. I think the title is just total. It's like equivalent of clickbait. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have maybe ideological differences or whatever, but they're not going to physically go.
You don't think they're going to do the Dark Knight Returns thing and put him in the suit and have their kryptonite and all that?
Like they could, but then kryptonite doesn't really exist in the right. Like they sort of established.
Bruce Wayne could find it, or Lex Luthor could. It could be something like that. Yeah.
Did they establish that it doesn't exist, or just we haven't found it yet?
I mean, they didn't mention it, but the effects exist because the whole thing with the ship.
He was weakened by them.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's.
He was weakened in a different way, but he.
Oops. Did we lose one? Oh, there we All right, so we probably have to start.
We learned that he can be weakened.
Yeah. Let's make this the final question then. A Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Batman, Superman movie. Are you more excited for it now that it's Ben Affleck than if it had been anybody else? Are you now even more enthusiastic about seeing this movie? Scott Calera, go.
Yeah, sure, because I think Affleck's the real deal. If it had been like an Armie Hammer, it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, Hammer's fine and all, but I feel like Affleck has paid his dues, and he's proven, as you pointed out, he's had some rough times, but he's really proven that he's kind of worthy of the job, I think. So I think it'd be cool. I'm still worried about the screenplay side of this project, but then again, Affleck is probably in a powerful enough position that he's going to be able to give notes that they'll have to listen to. So
yeah, I mean, in a way, could he be sort of a quote-unquote ghost director? I'm sure Christopher Nolan had more than a few words to say over how things went on Man of Steel, but I guess that's a topic we can save for a podcast or something. Roth, what do you think about? Are you more excited now that this is a Ben Affleck Batman Superman movie?
I'm definitely more intrigued for all of those reasons, that I think he probably is in a far more creative position than somebody like, an Armie Hammer ever would have been. And I like the idea of it being an older Batman. I really think that's an interesting thing to explore.
Okay. Joey?
Yeah, like I said, I'm super excited for Affleck as Batman, and just Superman versus Batman in general. I'm kind of nervous about. I just want them to be pals, and just do stuff together. I don't want them to see them fight. That's lame.
Well, do you think we'll get Crypto and Ace the Bat Hound?
Yeah, right.
Originally? Yeah.
I would, if that happens, I would just die because that's the greatest thing ever.
I want Ace the Bat Hound to show up. He doesn't even have to have the costume. He just has to be there at Wayne Manor.
Here's my pitch. Ready? So the spin-off Saturday morning cartoon of Superman versus Batman is Crypto and Ace doing their thing, but it's it's parallel.
I would totally DVR that.
Call me, Warner Brothers. I'm available.
Joey, they'll be friends. They'll be friends though eventually, Joey. I mean, that's the thing.
Eventually,
but that's how all great buddy cop movies happen, Joey. They have to start out with some
antagonism. Except they're fun. This isn't that they're fun and they're cracking jokes. This isn't going to be like that.
No,
look, we had Turner and Hooch. Now we're going to have Batman, Superman. Okay.
Those guys have butted. They've always butted heads, haven't they?
They butt heads, but they're total bros.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the versus part of that title is definitely getting played up. I think you're right to say it's equivalent to clickbait. I think there's going to be, just by nature of storytelling, there will be an inherent conflict there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're both heroes and they're guardians of their respective cities. One guy more so of the world now than just one city. But I think Lex Luthor, that's where somebody like that, where Bryan Cranston, if they'll get him, can really make this a very interesting actors kind of movie too. You're going to have three fine actors, and I'm sorry, Ben Affleck's, he's limited in what he can really do, but what he does, he's fine. Like, if you can survive J-Lo, you can survive a cowl. Okay, you'll be fine. So, all right, guys. Well, I think that'll about do it for this Google Hangout. Keep it locked here on IGN for all your Batman versus Superman / Man of Steel sequel / whatever it's going to end up being called. News, opinions. Look, this is the day after this happened. This is going to be a topic of conversation now for at least 2 years, so this will be the first of many discussions. Look for more from pretty much the entire IGN crew weighing in on this in the days, months, weeks, years ahead. Thanks for watching.